Recording in progress. Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Good evening, colleagues. If you could take your seats, please. We're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilor Kelly, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, colleagues. We are being both audio taped and videotaped tonight. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council. I have two councilors participating remotely, Councilors Wright and Councilor Kalis. I do expect Councilor Baker here, I hope fairly soon, and otherwise we have a full contingent. We are going to proceed with the first call items, and then we're going to have an escort committee chaired by Councilor Leary, who's going to be joined by Councilors Krinsman and Getz to escort the mayor into the chamber where she's going to give her budget presentation. And then we have one item on second call this evening. Before we start with the Land Use Committee, I want to do two things. First, to take a moment to thank our police department, our fire department, our DPW workers, and everyone else who worked tirelessly to make yesterday's Boston Marathon a success. For anyone, I don't think any one of us ran it this year, but for those of us like myself who had the opportunity to watch, it was a terrific day. Everything went very smoothly, a little warm for the runners, but they were terrific. And a day that, as Newtonians, we can be very proud that once again, we show off in a positive way our wonderful community. I also want to offer on behalf of the council our congratulations to Councilor Getz, who has become a grandmother for the first time, and I think that's just wonderful. So. You know, I personally think it's important that collectively we try to celebrate those good occasions in life, and that's certainly one of them. So with that, Chair Kelly for the Land Use Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Land Use Committee report starts on page 83. We met on April 2nd. On item number 117-24, which was a request to further extend a non-conforming two-family dwelling and non-conforming front setback at 265-267 River Street. Land Use Committee approved that unanimously. Number 159-24, a request to allow for a for-profit school at 2 Wells Ave. That was also approved unanimously. And I would like to assign some public hearings.
Go ahead, please, Councilor Kelly.
I'd like to assign a public hearing for April 23rd, item number 203-24, which is a request for an administrative site plan review to allow a daycare use and a special permit to waive 6 parking stalls at 66 Needham Street. And the second one on the same date, April 23rd, number 202-24, a request to allow a series of retaining walls exceeding 4 feet in height in a setback at 21 Oakland Street, Unit 2. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. Vice Chair Oliver for the Zoning and Planning Committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The report begins on page 84. We met on April the 8th, item 13224, requesting discussion and amendments to Newton Zoning Ordinance Chapter 30. That item was approved 701. We have item 13324, requesting discussion and amendments to Newton Zoning Ordinance Chapter 30 to incentivize small business, which was approved 8-0. Item 16724, request for authorization to submit FY25 annual action plan, was approved 8-0. We have an item on second call, looking for the number here, number 7624, parens 2, was placed on second call by Councilor Danberg. The rest of the items were held.
Thank you. Programs and Services, Councilor Krinsman, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Programs and Services Committee met on April 10th. The report begins on page 86, but 2 items were held, and the only item that I'm reporting out is on page 87, which is item 176-24. This was Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to transfer $165,000 for the tennis courts at Newton South High School, which was approved by the committee by a vote of 7-0. With that, I would move the report.
Thank you, Councilor Krinsman. For the Public Safety and Transportation Committee, Chair Grossman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The report begins on page 87. The committee met on April 3rd. The first item, 144-24, Wasif Wali requesting a new public auto license, was approved 7-0. The next item, 150-24, a recommendation to accept Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 100G, was approved 7-0. The next item, 151-24, requesting a discussion with the police on traffic enforcement, was voted no action necessary, 7-0. The next item was held. Item 153-24, requesting a discussion with the police and school departments on school safety protocols, was voted no action necessary, 7-0. The final item, 162-24, requesting a new public auto license for Abderrahmane Fella, was approved 7-0. And with that, I move the report.
Thank you, Chair Grossman. Chair Albright for the Public Facilities Committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The report starts on page 88. We met on April 3rd, and one item was passed out of committee, item 173-24, which was for Eversource Energy petitioning a grant of to move 2 poles for the Lincoln Elliott project on Pearl Street and Jackson Road. All the other items were held. We had a discussion on gas leaks and jet network geothermal. And I would just point out to the council that on June, National Grid will be coming to the Public Facilities Committee to discuss both of those topics. So keep your eyes open for that meeting. Thank you, Mr. President. That moves.
Thank you, Chair Albright. Chair Gentile for the Finance Committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The finance report begins at the top of page 90. The first item is 150-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to provide for payment of funeral and burial expenses of up to $2,000 for any firefighter or police officer killed while in the performance of their duty. This was approved by a vote of 6-0. Next item, 166-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to accept and expend a Massachusetts MOTT budget grant in the amount of $42,500 to improve stormwater management and beautification of the Cheesecake Brook along Albemarle Park. This was approved 7-0. 168-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to accept and expend a grant from the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism in the amount of $50,000 for Follow Park, which was approved 7-0. 169-24, acceptance of a $75,000 grant from, again, the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism to make improvements to 3 trails, Kennard Park, Kessler Woods, and the Upper Falls Greenway. This was approved 7-0. 174-24, Her Honor the Mayor requesting the appointment of James Pellegrini as a constable for the City of Newton, approved 7-0. And 176-24, Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to transfer $165,000 from budget reserve for the purpose of resurfacing the tennis courts at Newton South High. Before I move the report, I would ask to be recognized to request 2 public hearings.
Go ahead, please, Chair Gentile.
First one, and both are on page 97, is 8-24, Her Honor the Mayor submitting the fiscal years 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan. A public hearing is scheduled for May the 6th, 2024. And the second is 194-24. Her Honor the Mayor submitting the FY 225 to FY 29 supplemental capital improvement plan, again, for a public hearing to be held on May the 6th of 2024. And with that, I would move the report.
Thank you, Chair Gentile. We've been joined by Councilor Baker, so we now have a full complement of the council this evening. Chair Danberg for real property reuse, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is no report, but what I would like to, because the one item that we're working on was held, what I would like to do in order to allow people to plan for their calendars is to announce that we have just decided, we've chosen been able to find a date in June when we can hold the next meeting. It will be Thursday, June 13th, which is the second, instead of the 4th, it is the second Thursday in the month of June. It was very difficult to find a date between now and then because of all of the budget meetings that we have. So June 13th is the date.
Thank you for that heads up, Councilor Danberg. All right, with that, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Albright.
Aye.
Counselor Baker.
Aye.
Counselor Bixby.
Aye.
Counselor Block.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Farrell.
Aye.
Counselor Gento.
Aye.
Counselor Getz.
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Mickley.
Aye.
Counselor Oliver.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Laredo.
Aye.
Motion carries 24 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And now I'm going to ask Councilor Leary to chair the escort committee, for the mayor to be joined by Councilors Krinsman and Getz, please. That's the heads up. Still pretty. I have no idea what they're doing. Hello, Madam Mayor. See you again. All yours.
Good evening, everybody. To President Laredo and Vice President Kalis, who I think is joining us by Zoom, feel better, David, President Emeritus Baker, members of the City Council and School Committee, and a especially warm welcome to our Superintendent, Anna Nolan, who has joined us tonight. And to everyone here at City Hall or watching at home, good evening. So I am very happy to be here tonight after a spectacular Boston Marathon yesterday. And tonight I present to you a stable, strong, sustainable, and hefty budget for the City of Newton's next fiscal year beginning July 1st, as well as a strong supplemental capital improvement plan for the next 5 years. Our revenues and our expenses for next year in the operating budget increased by 5.1%, or $25.7 million. for a total of $525.4 million. An additional $68.5 million is in our enterprise funds for water, sewer, and stormwater services, and we have $5.1 million in our community preservation funds. The investments in this budget are a clearer expression of our values here in Newton. Educating our young people is prioritized, with $282.6 million directly invested in the education of our next generation, the students in the Newton Public Schools. Notably, we are increasing the funding to the Newton Public Schools by 5.2%. The municipal side, including all municipal operations, pensions and retiree health insurance, and debt service, increases by 5.1%. These dollars allow us to do so much for our community. Highlights on the city side include increasing investments in road paving, traffic calming, and curb installations, intensifying our efforts to address flooding and phosphorus control in our stormwater operations, advancing affordable housing by making targeted Newton Affordable Housing Trust and CDBG investments, both at the West Newton Armory and Family Aid, while working closely with the City Council and the chair of the Reuse Committee, Vicki Damberg, to create permanent, affordable family homes at the city-owned former Walker Center property. Adding 7 permanent full-time positions, some in emergency dispatch through an expanded collaboration between police, fire, and dispatch, and others in forestry with more in-house tree maintenance specialists to do more work more efficiently. Providing our police officers with new equipment to minimize the escalation of force whenever possible. Continuing the higher level of investments in athletic fields and expanding our attention to recreation programs. Ramping up staffing and senior services as we prepare to open the Cooper Center for Active Living in the fall of 2025, as well as to meet the changing and growing needs of our fastest growing demographic group. Accelerating training and professional development for city staff, supporting our goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion as we develop metrics to help us hire, promote, and retain employees. Directing our opioid settlement funds to overdose prevention, harm reduction, and support for those who have lost someone to this epidemic, as we simultaneously focus on serving those with mental health challenges. Leaning in with both our operating and capital budgets on sustainability, from new solar projects to geothermal heating and cooling, to decarbonization efforts, and to lowering our embodied and operating carbon in our new and renovated buildings. Addressing the ongoing inflationary pressures on trash and recycling operations, increasing repair and maintenance on our buildings, supporting arts, culture, and community events, and thus joy and quality of life with grants, programs, festivals, and new public performance spaces, including 410 seats at the Lincoln Elliott Auditorium. For the Newton Public Schools, the addition of $14 million over last year's budget will immediately be felt by our students. This is my 7th budget as mayor and the 7th consecutive year that I have increased the NPS budget. Integral to the $282.6 million available to NPS is the new NPS Educational Stabilization Fund. With the support of this City Council, we transformed $22 million of one-time funds into ongoing support to bolster operations for the Newton Public Schools over the next 5 years, $4.1 million of which will be used in the FY 2025 NPS budget. The Newton Public Schools are adding the equivalent of 46.2 full-time educators and staff this fall. These professionals will allow our students to have smaller class sizes in our high schools, increased mental health services at the elementary level, and improved curriculum and pedagogy throughout the district. Notably, another $44 million is invested within the municipal operating budget for school-related costs. This includes school health and school nurse services, school crossing guards, school building debt service, school property insurance, water, sewer, solid waste, and recycling in the schools, maintenance of school athletic fields, and snow and ice control on the grounds of our 23 school buildings. We have increased debt service by 5.1% so that many important capital projects can move forward. This increase is in line with our financial management guidelines and our long-term financial forecast. A sample of these projects that will be moving forward with this funding include 3 completely updated elementary schools, Lincoln Elliott, Countryside, and Franklin, are currently being designed and or built, and designs for a major addition and more renovations are well underway at a 4th, Horace Mann. Our new senior center, the Cooper Center for Active Living, is under construction. Swimmers and splashers will be at 2 new pools and our first ever major splash pad at Gath, with a ribbon cutting early this summer. Our first dedicated pickleball courts, 6 of them, and a brand new basketball court will be built at Albemarle, with significant improvements to the fields there as well, as we upgrade the athletic fields at 2 other locations, Burr and McGrath, and replace the synthetic turf field at a well-lit Newton North. A reconstruction of Petty Square in Upper Falls is underway to make this village square safer and even more attractive for the restaurants, shops, and small businesses. A pilot on Washington Street is moving along to create a safer, more attractive, and friendly roadscape. Newton Police and public building staff are hard at work on a large capital infusion at police headquarters to provide state-of-the-art police dispatch and training facilities, following recent investments in the HVAC roof and IT systems, plus the reconstruction of the parking lot behind police headquarters, along with fencing, will be starting this year. A new aerial ladder number 3 is being ordered for the fire department. Pellegrini Fieldhouse in the lake will be improved with new windows, doors, and roof, masonry repairs, and a fresh coat of paint on the interior. The aging heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system at the library will be replaced with an electric one. A new Spears Garden along Washington Street will be planted and tended by Newtonians, with a special thank you to Councilor Greenberg. Water meters are being replaced with a new advanced system that can alert us when we have a leak. Don't forget to sign up for the alerts, everybody. The Bullows Pond Dam will be safer with a series of investments. Water and sewer pump stations will be reconstructed Union Street in Newton Center will see a significant drainage upgrade. Councilor Danberg, that one's for you. Meanwhile, Hammond Pond Parkway, Needham Street, and Comm Ave in Auburndale are being improved with significant investments by the Commonwealth. So, how can we do so much and keep our bonding costs manageable? First, we can thank our residents for voting yes on the override funding for Countryside and Franklin. Second, we strategically invested one-time funds from free cash, overlay surplus, and ARPA to pay cash for some of our major projects. Third, we restructured our pension payments. All of this enabled us to keep our debt service costs in line. And here's another question. Why are our revenues so strong, allowing for an overall increase in expenses of 5.1% this year? You will recall from a second ago, fiscal year 2025 revenue is projected to increase by $25.7 million. This increase includes an additional $17.2 million from property taxes. Newton has strong, stable property taxes, both residential and commercial, which account for 83% of our overall revenue base. Our property tax levy is capped at a 2.5% increase annually by Proposition 2.5. This 2.5% is combined with modest, stable, and predictable new property tax revenues from so-called new growth. Together, this means that we can count on revenues growing by 3.5% annually, sometimes a bit more. The total revenue this year is supplemented, though, by an additional $4.1 million interfund transfer from the new NPS Educational Stabilization Fund. The Stabilization Fund, in turn, stems from the diligence and skill for over a decade by our assessors, staff, and legal team, leading to a major settlement with Eversource last August. FY 2025 interest income from investments is also increasing by $4.2 million as interest rates continue to be quite strong and as we issued bond anticipation notes. Finally, a modest additional $700,000 of state education, state unrestricted aid, and other state aid is part of our increased revenues. Please know, however, that while high interest rates may linger for a while longer, we do not foresee another large one-time tax settlement on the horizon. We are also on solid ground financially, in part because we have continued to focus on managing our costs. We have signed union contracts that align with our revenues. This is critical as personnel expenses account for 87% of NPS costs and 70% on the city side. We take great care to ensuring no layoffs as a result of new contracts. While we read last week of the pink slips going out to school personnel in Andover in the wake of a new contract there, I'm proud that in contrast, Newton is hiring staff. We also manage carefully our regular ongoing operations to absorb increases in the costs of some line items that are more than our overall growth in revenues. 3 such examples are health insurance, growing next year at 7.5%, a rate so many of us are seeing in our personal lives. Pension funding, growing at 6.6% next year as determined by the schedule set by the Retirement Board, to make up for decades of underinvestment and the past practice of kicking this liability down the road. And electricity growing at 13% next year as this sector continues to experience volatility. Similarly, we manage carefully our ongoing operations because some revenue sources are flat or growing meagerly. Examples include our largest source of state aid, school funding known as Chapter 70, which may increase by only 1.8% next year, as Newton is classified by the state as a minimum aid community. Cannabis revenues have been cut in half as the State Cannabis Control Commission essentially disallowed any more direct host community payments. Hotel taxes and auto excise taxes are flat compared to 2019. And most importantly, to repeat, Prop 2.5 caps the vast majority of our revenue growth in the tax levy to 2.5%. Interestingly, on the flip side, we also managed our costs carefully, even as we had the benefit of significant one-time American Rescue Plan Act funds. We avoided a financial cliff and ensuing layoffs now by using those dollars primarily for one-time projects, immediate capital investments, and time-limited services. Thus, we are transitioning to this period when the cash infusion from federal funding is running out, transitioning smoothly to that time period. We also take our AAA credit rating seriously and manage our finances accordingly. This rating from Moody's provides guardrails for the balancing act between immediate operating needs and long-term financial obligations. The AAA rating also gives us access to the lowest borrowing costs when we bond capital investments, such as the new home for the Lincoln Elliott Elementary School, the construction of the Cooper Center, and the Gath Pool Complex. To put this in perspective, Newton's tax base is strong and stable. While our village centers do have some empty storefronts and our office buildings do have some vacancies, we are not facing significant potential lost tax revenue like our neighbor Boston. Similarly, the state has missed its revenue benchmarks for 8 of the last 9 months and has instituted a hiring freeze for all but essential workers. I am confident about our FY 2025 budget and Newton's financial future. At the same time, when I look ahead to next year and the following 5 years, I'm keeping a close eye on a number of challenges. This includes the economic cycle. At the moment, the rise in inflation is moderating a bit, but we're getting mixed signals from the Fed about when interest rates might start declining. And we still expect to see significant staffing shortages accompanying the low unemployment rates that we're experiencing. On the city side, we are still not fully funding in the operating budget a number of items, but instead depending on free cash. We have accelerated road and sidewalk work, but we have too many streets filled with potholes, so we still need to carve out more funding to further the progress we're making. Just as we need to have a healthy amount of free cash annually to support ongoing work, the Newton Public Schools are similarly dependent on their version of one-time funding, which is called Carry Forward. We recently established the Educational Stabilization Fund for NPS, which our terrific new superintendent, Dr. Anna Noland, intends to utilize over the next 5 years. Using this funding over 5 years rather than 8 leaves a 3-year budget gap until our pensions are fully funded, but the superintendent has already begun to find ways to increase revenues or efficiencies, totaling $5 million in the next 5 years, so NPS doesn't face an insurmountable financial cliff when the stabilization fund is fully expended at the end of fiscal year 2029. Importantly, I share Superintendent Noland's vision to do more for our students beyond what the typical 3.5% annual increase in the NPS budget allocation allows. As a community, we will have to make decisions in the years ahead about supporting our students and our schools. In closing, our city of Newton is in a really good place financially as we successfully address 3 financial goals simultaneously. First, moving forward sustainably to make Newton greater, better, and more beautiful, focusing on excellent schools, first-rate public safety, better and safer streets, sidewalks, and mobility, caring support for those struggling, top-notch services and programs for older residents, beautiful parks, playgrounds, and conservation areas, vibrant villages, outstanding services, and proactive actions to address housing, transportation, economic development, and climate resiliency. Second, protecting the city's financial strength and budgetary flexibility so we can face evolving risks and unpredictable financial conditions, such as pandemics, economic downturns, inflationary cycles, and dramatic weather events. Third, fulfilling obligations made by prior mayors, city councilors, and school committee members that we have not yet funded sufficiently, especially the $694 million of unfunded pensions and retiree health care liabilities, which we are strategically funding over a 30-year period. We are proactively managing revenues, expenditures, capital investments, and retiree benefit expenses while maintaining a AAA credit rating, thereby balancing funding current services and our long-term pension and retiree healthcare liabilities, and ultimately saving money for our taxpayers in the long run. I am so grateful to our residents and business people who provide the funding to support our community. For our city councilors and school committee members who help guide the investments, and for our city and school staff who do the hard work daily of serving people who live, work, and go to school here. A special shout out goes to Maureen Lemieux, Jonathan Yo, and Liam Hurley, who do much of the daily grind on creating these financial and capital plans with the help of Perry Rosenfield, Connor Roach, and Sean Mannion, and so many leaders across city and school departments. And would all of you also please welcome Trevor Goring, give a wave, Trevor, is our new financial analyst. It's his first day of work here at City Hall. Welcome, Trevor. I also want to add one more thank you tonight. Health and Human Services Commissioner Linda Walsh, who somewhat reluctantly is sitting right there, is retiring in June after serving our city for 37 years. She has exceptional smarts, emotional intelligence, dedication, compassion, and composure, along with an amazing ability to make us all laugh when we need it most. With her long experience and deep understanding of the science behind public health, she helped lead us through the pandemic. Her wisdom and heart has helped ease our community's pain during times of great tragedy. Linda has consistently helped us through so many challenges. And I mean any challenge, including a very aggressive daddy goose protecting his mate and their eggs at a City Hall nest along Comm Ave right out there. So last week, Linda ran out at the first sound of an angry goose screeching and being aggressive with some unknowing pedestrians. Then she posted signs and cordoned off the area to warn people, including the marathon spectators and volunteers. Daddy Goose was not happy, by the way, yesterday during the marathon, just saying. We will miss Linda Walsh. With gratitude, respect, and deep affection, I look forward to working closely with her for a few more months. And I know I join with so many across the city in wishing her all the best in her next adventure. To Linda Walsh. So I am filled with hope and confidence. Our community is overflowing with people like Linda on the staff and others who are residents and business people and leaders of nonprofits who willingly give of their time and talents to help each other and give back. And while the world is filled with trials and tribulations, we're privileged to call Newton home, and I'm honored to serve as your mayor. Good night, everybody.
Would the escort committee escort the mayor back, please? We'll take a 30 seconds, no more, 30-second recess while the mayor is escorted out. And the mayor is also reminding me that as we leave this evening, our budget books are outside and there's plenty of deep reading for us to do. So 30 seconds, and then we have one item on second call, please. Metaphorical. I'll move them along. Good? Everyone ready? Yeah, ready. Folks, if everyone could come back in and take their seats, please. What? Not good. All right, folks, could you grab your seats, please? I'd like to get us back in session and move this along. Colleagues? I'll start to call names in a second if folks don't take a seat. Thank you all. Oh, well, that's different. Okay. The pictures of the grandson come first. All right. All right. Second call item, Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So we have, colleagues, we have one item on second call. It's a zoning and planning item. I'm going to recognize Councilor Baker to report it out. And then Councilor Danberg has placed this on second call, so I'll entertain her next, and then we'll open it up for whatever discussion proceeds, or follows, excuse me. Go ahead, Councilor Baker.
So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. And this is an item that relates to a 4-foot retaining wall requirement, and the report of the committee is, just to get you to the right page, is on page 86. It is 7624, number 2. This is a discussion and possible ordinance amendment to require a special permit for retaining walls over 4 feet. This is, to be more specific, the Zoning and Planning Committee and Councilor Lipoff requesting discussion and possible ordinance amendment to Chapter 30, Section 5.42, to require a special permit for all retaining walls over 4 feet on site. So let me provide the background for this item, because this is the first response that we have tried to make to items that the councilor has docketed relating to problems of building construction in the city that seem to be difficult for the community and the neighborhood involved. Specifically, this item is a portion of a larger item that was brought to the council earlier by a number of our colleagues, which was first heard by the committee back in February. This was a discussion and possible ordinance amendment to deal with grade changes created during construction causing stormwater runoff on neighboring properties. This was an item, I won't read the whole text, but the basic concern is that there were properties that were being built up in a way that caused runoff to adjacent properties, and also the problem of installing retaining walls. At the meeting, we first heard this, it became clear that the planning department recommended that there be 2 stages for this work on this item. The first stage would be a possible short-term amendment to follow what we had already done with the Village Center Ordinance, which is to require a special permit for 4-foot retaining walls anywhere on the site, not just within the setback, which is what our current rule is, and then retain the other item in a larger review to be undertaken by the department, where they could come back and report to the council and through the committee on what it recommended for a more nuanced and robust change to our ordinance to accommodate that, involving questions of how you measure height and so forth. So the committee followed that recommendation and split the item, and that is the item that essentially came back to us again in March. And in March, we discussed the planning department's recommendation, which was that we add a special permit requirement of anywhere on the site, but also include criteria to guide the discretion of the Land Use Committee in making that decision so that it could be informed about the issues in an appropriate way and the community could be informed as well, and also recommending that if there were these retaining walls within 25 feet of each other, that they also would be brought within the review process. So the basic point here is to try and remedy a situation which I'm going to ask the clerk to show you, because I think several pictures will explain this better than I can do it orally. And these are from the Planning Department reports on this item, and I think we can show that. So this is an example of an existing retaining wall that has been constructed not within the setback, so it did not require any special permit from the City Council. There is, if you can show the next slide, this was a particular site over in Newton Center. This is a particular retaining wall which we found out was classified as a retaining wall, but was constructed which enabled a very different aspect to the community on that particular site. And go to the next one. And this is another situation where we have a construction again, because these were constructed within the as-of-right envelope. So just to clarify one other aspect of this, I've conferred with the law department. The net effect of this is that if the ordinance is passed as the committee recommends, and the vote was 7-0 with one abstention, I believe Councilor Albright, that this ordinance would effectively require a special permit for any 4-foot retaining wall that meets the criteria set out in the ordinance wherever it occurs in the city, with the guidance of the special permit criteria. So that's the discussion that went on in committee, and I would move the report.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Danberg, you place this on second call.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. And I placed this on second call because I was in fact the one who moved approval and also voted in favor of this in committee. I remain in favor of doing something about the issue that we have with 4-foot with what amounts to a series of 3-foot 11-inch retaining walls that we have seen on numerous occasions, especially the very egregious one that Councilor Baker has shown us that I believe was in Ward 1. I actually went over and saw that myself, and a group of us realized a couple of years ago now, I think, when we saw it, that there had to be something done to improve the situation and stop this type of thing from being built. I put it on second call, however, because I subsequently, after the vote, heard from a number of people, including the chairman of the Land Use Committee, who is a site planner herself, and felt that this had been rushed through, that the Land Use Committee really needed to have a chance to discuss this. And I would like, along with Chairman Kelly, I would like to hear the opinions and get an opportunity to get feedback from the Land Use Committee, and we have not done that. So I am asking that this be placed on, that this be remanded to the Zoning and Planning Committee, even for one more discussion on it, which I don't see any harm in doing. This is not something that we're going to drag out for any period of time. It is something that we can have a discussion, get feedback, and then move on with it as we all want to do. There is also the issue of drainage that I don't think was completely resolved on this, and I would like to hear from Councilor Kelly, the chairman of Land Use, on this also. Thank you very much.
So, Councilor Danberg, are you making a motion to recommit? All right, so is there a second to that motion?
I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear.
Second to the motion by Counselor Lipoff. All right, so let me be clear, there's a motion on the floor. The only discussion right now is whether we ought to recommit to committee or not. If it gets recommitted, I want to be very clear, it is not going to the Land Use Committee. It is going back to the Zoning and Planning Committee, just so everybody is crystal clear on that. So with that, is there anyone who wishes to comment on the motion? Counselor Albright, Counselor Baker.
The reason why I abstained in committee was because I had the same concern that Councillor Danberg had, that it came up on the first meeting and for discussion, and suddenly we were approving it, and I hadn't heard from architects just to hear what the impact would be. Subsequent to that, we were told that the Building Pros group had reviewed this, and they in fact did send us a memo saying that they've reviewed it and they find it a good first step. It is a very blunt instrument, and it will not even solve all the problems that we saw on the screen tonight. I have no objection to sending it back to committee, and just to maybe to hear a little bit more from architects about how this does and doesn't solve the problem. I think it's probably something that we have to do as a first step, but it's certainly not the end of the line, and it will probably need tweaking as we move forward.
Thank you, Counselor Albright. Counselor Baker, and then Counselor Lipoff.
So, thank you. Colleagues, I understand that we can always send things back to committee. We do that from time to time, and this committee serves the council. I would just argue against recommittal. We had an extensive discussion about this item twice before we reached the public hearing stage. The planning department recommended in favor of this. The opportunity to take a first step, we still have a significant amount of work to do on the main item, you recall, and the main item still affords us an opportunity to make adjustments if we need to. But without this amendment, it means that the situations you've seen on the screen can go forward as of right all over the city. And if we pass this amendment, then we will have a chance to have them reviewed. If there is a particularly good project because somebody has something they've done, I'm quite confident that our Land Use Committee will hear it quickly and expedite its approval. But we don't want having people have the ability to do something in the process that is going to produce more of the situation like you saw on the screen. This is an opportunity for the council to begin a process that I think we're going to have to undertake over this next term, which is to respond to some of the development excesses in the city so that we can make as good a city as we possibly can. This is a first step, and we have a relatively crowded agenda of activities to take care of, including the electrification ordinance you all asked us to take back and take a look at again. And so I think that I would urge us not to recommit this and to pass the item and get on with the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Baker. Counselor Kelly, Lipoff, Kalis, Maliki. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I don't want to hold us up too much tonight, but I appreciate Councilor Danberg putting this on second call to recommit. As she said, I too heard after this meeting, the next day, because land use was not aware that this was going on at ZAP, from architects and attorneys, land use attorneys, who had questions about some of the nuances that were not dealt with yet. Just there are questions. I agree with the intent of this. I think the problem, as we saw in some of the photos, is very real. I think another 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of a little bit more, less rushed conversation amongst a few other people would be really helpful. I saw this letter too from the building professionals group, and though they say that a more nuanced plan will come later, that this will be very helpful without the excessive use of retaining walls, because, well, a special permit is a more onerous thing than by right. So I don't think that this is necessarily going to make it easier, as they say here. Other committee members and council members at that ZAP meeting expressed concerns, though it did end up being pushed forward to a vote that night. So I appreciate the suggestion to take it back to committee and to discuss a little bit more with land use, to talk about things like terracing, setbacks, drainage, because it relates so directly to our work as a special permit granting authority, I would appreciate sending this back to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kelly. Councilor Lipoff?
Yes, I usually don't like sending things back to committee, but I don't see the harm here, especially because I got a lot of calls from people saying, this was quick, this is a blunt instrument. I have spoken to planning, and I respect the group of architects that weighed in, and I know we need to do something. The next step in this legislation is something that I have proposed with a few others, which is looking at the average grade of the home that is taken down, because all the developers are building them up. And that's something that we can work on. This is a first step, but the problem is, and Councilor Gentile was here, back when we had a 3-foot grade change. There was a time when if you changed the grade anywhere on the site by 3 feet, it triggered a special permit. That basically said everything was by special permit. And we fixed that because it was too blunt. And we changed that, and we brought in FAR, and we were much more reasonable, and with retaining walls within the setback. Now, clearly something else is needed. This wasn't vetted through anybody from land use at the time, and I just feel like one more conversation. And I will say that if we do this as an interim step, or it could be permanent, along with the rest of what we're trying to do to solve the issues of homes being risen up, which is causing runoff and issues all over the city. 70%, I think almost 70% of the teardowns are in Ward 8. So Councilor Kalis and Farrell and I are dealing with this on a daily basis. We have friends that have ponds in their backyards now with ducks in them. So this is a serious problem, but I do agree that this is a little more complicated than just saying any 4-foot wall or combination of them triggers a special permit. I think we would be somewhat inundated. Some feel like that will turn design away from that and make better design. Time will tell, but I think it's okay to send it back and have one more discussion.
Thank you, Councilor Lipoff. Councilor Kalis, Maliki, Oliver. I'll recognize Councilor Baker after that again.
I think Councilor Lipoff just made the point to not send it back. I mean, his argument about the flooding that we're getting and all of the grade changes, that's exactly what's coming up next, which is what I want to definitely get to. Now, sending something back like this is not perfect. I recognize that, and I hear everybody's comments, but sending it back isn't as simple as sending it back and it comes back in 2 weeks, especially when we're right up against the budget. This could actually, I mean, you send it back, it could go a discussion or maybe 2 into June. There might be somebody who has an issue and it gets extended throughout the summer and we get back to it in September. Like, this is something that we have to deal with. And if we then need to change it later, then we do. But we heard from the architects. We've not everybody is going to be happy with it. I think this should move ahead and we continue to move on with the zoning and planning agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Councilor Maliki, Oliver, Baker, Lucas, Leary, in that order. And I'll get to others. And folks, just a reminder, we're speaking just on the motion to recommit. I'll remind you that is a majority vote. Approval of this item requires a 2/3 vote, just so everyone keeps that in mind. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'll try to be short. I'm short. I absolutely agree with Councilors Baker and Kalis. We should not be sending this back. This is, as has been mentioned, it's 2 years since this egregious wall in Newton Corner came up, and the fact that we haven't done anything about it in 2 years is embarrassing. This is way overdue. I know it's insufficient. We've got to get to the drainage issues, the grade changes, the pretend grade changes, or the sort of grade changes meant to disguise foundation heights and even retaining wall heights. But we've got to do what we can now and show that we're serious about doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. President. There have been a couple of comments here that make sense and a couple that I'm just going to not agree with. This was not rushed. This was not pushed through. We've talked about this item at least twice. I believe I heard a date of February. I think it was actually early in February. That's not a reason to not send it back. But what I haven't heard here this evening is to discuss what? I don't understand, like, if this is going to come back to committee, please have a clear understanding and communicate it. What is it that we're going to be discussing that we aren't already intending to discuss on the larger item that Councilor Baker was already talking about? We already know that there are grading issues that are in front of us. We know that there are water management issues that are in front of us. However, those aren't going to change simply because we're saying, let's expand the need for a special permit based on where this 4-foot retaining wall or 3'11" retaining wall would go. Those processes are still going to be maintained. We're not changing that at this point. I firmly believe that we've been waiting for 2+ years to get to something like this. I mean, the Great Wall of Newton Corner up there, we got to get at that. And I apologize if I stole somebody's thunder for that, but I did steal the Great Wall of Newton Corner from Councilor Lucas. My apologies for that. You can see him gesticulating. But really, if this is going to get back or be sent back, please be very crystal clear on what it is you need to talk about between now and the next time we bring this up, which will be September. And I don't even recall, Councilor Baker, perhaps you do, when it was that planning was going to be able to come back to us with the rest of the work on the other portions of the item, the original item. So I'm not supportive of bringing this back to committee. We need to keep moving forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councilor Baker, Lucas, Leary, and then Farrell.
Mr. President, I've spoken before. Let me yield to others who have not, and then come back to me, please.
Very good. Councilor Lucas.
Yes, that is correct. Council Oliver, you did steal the Great Wall of Newton Corner from me. And if anyone who hasn't seen it, I recommend that you go out to that site and take a look at it for yourself. It is incredible. But I think we're speaking on the motion to refer back, not on...
The only item before us is a motion to
Okay.
recommit.
Well, then I agree with Councilor Kelly that land use has not really had a chance to look at this item. So I would like to send this back to committee so I could ask planning some questions. Perhaps inspectional services will be there as well, because this is going to create a lot of special permit requests. I think that's what's going to happen for the land use committee. And I do ask, if this motion does pass, that the chair of ZAP just give the members of the land use committee a heads up of, when we're gonna hear this item so we can plan accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. I'll just remind everybody, of course, that in our Friday packets every week are the agendas and the items. So I think what you're asking, Councilor Lucas, I assume is more than the typical 2 or 3 days that we get, because we all, of course, are advised, and I'll remind my land use colleagues as well, of course, is that we are free Monday nights. That's one of the benefits of being on land use. So not only do you get to attend, if you so choose, zoning and planning, but you get the pleasure of participating in finance discussions as well. With that, Councilor Leary.
Thank you, Mr. President. The horror of the Playstead Wall going up 23 feet will be 3 years this August that came to my attention, and the retired gentleman that lived at the bottom of that huge mountain. I'm still horrified by that was a by right project. I have not heard any particular reason why this item or this discussion couldn't be continued after this passes. We all agree that
maybe adjustments will be made. I'm going to align myself with Councilors Kalis, Baker, Maliki, and Oliver. I do not think it's appropriate to send it back to committee. I think changes and adjustments can be made, and we should see how this goes, because I just can't stand to see. I think it's already been almost 3 years. We've had enough time.
Thank you, Councilor Leary. Councilor, I see Councilor Writer's her hand up, but I first have Councilor Farrell, then Getz, then Wright. Councilor Farrell. Please, could you put your microphone on, please?
Thank you. I don't believe that this should be sent back to the Zoning and Planning Committee either. I've attended almost all of those meetings. This was not a rushed decision. There was a lot of conversation about it. Very thoughtful conversation by many members. And given what my colleague from Ward 8 says, so much of this is happening that I think we need to move forward as soon as possible to get to the larger issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Farrell. Councilor Getz.
I was actually asking you to acknowledge, Councilor Wright.
I have Councilor Wright after you.
No. Well, she's been up there quite a while. Okay, but I actually will not support it going back to committee. While I appreciate the need and the wanting to have interlinkedness between land use and zoning and planning, I do feel as if we've discussed this quite a bit. I consider this, 3 prongs, just in terms of controlling grade, controlling stormwater, and now, height, actually how much land we actually, or soil is captured on the lot. But I do think we need to move forward. We were told by the planning department that this would actually go into effect in June. So there is a delay already in terms of its effective date. So I do not support it going back to committee.
Thank you. And I think, was this your first occasion? No. Always looking for applause if we can give it. All right, next I have Councilor Wright, who's been very patient online. Then I have Councilor Albright, Councilor Block. Anybody else after that? Councilor Baker again? All right. Councilor Wright.
Thank you, President Albright. Laredo, sorry. I do not support...
No offense taken, Councilor Wright.
I do not support sending this back. We briefly heard this in January. We discussed it in February, and we discussed it in this last month. And so it has been discussed. It's been in the Friday packet, and we need to do something sooner than later. This is imperfect. I rather seen 50 feet instead of 25 feet, but I still supported it because we need to get something onto the books now and not something in the fall. So I will not support sending this back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Councilor Albright, Block, Baker, and unless somebody else has something critical to say, I'm going to suggest we vote on this one way or the other. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I just want to remind folks that I brought this issue to ZAP maybe 12 years ago, and it was rejected at that time. So it's been a very long time waiting for this, and another 2 weeks wouldn't hurt, or whatever it takes to bring it back and then bring it back here. Councilor Oliver asked to what end to bring it back to committee. One thing that I'm not sure we have good enough is the criteria. What criteria will the Land Use Committee use to judge whether they should grant a special permit or not? If somebody wants to put a swimming pool in their backyard and raise the grade 4 or 5 feet, is that okay or not? I think the Land Use Committee needs some criteria, or it becomes just very subjective, and it's subjective enough as it is in the Land Use Committee. The issue that Councilor Wright just mentioned and Councilor Greenberg mentioned it is the 25 feet. There was a lot of discussion of whether that's the right number or not. I also would have liked to see some examples of how this would affect projects that are going through right now. So, for example, the Braylon Chase Street project, we were told in the meeting, they showed us the picture, but this particular thing wouldn't affect that project. It wouldn't change a thing about that project. So what are we really doing? I don't think the planning committee made
So
the
let me
made the
just
case.
remind us, we're debating the motion to recommit.
I'm trying to give
Go ahead,
Councilor
please.
Oliver the reasons why I think recommittal is the right way to do it. I do think we need to do something. I've thought so for a very long time. Although it was mentioned in committee a couple of times, the actual ordinance didn't come to us until preparing for that particular meeting. I didn't hear any experts who were giving us input ahead of time to whether to pass it or not. So I would like more input from experts. Those are my reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Albright. Councilor Block, Baker, Lipoff for 10 seconds, maybe 15, and then I'm going to try to call the question. Go ahead.
Thank you, President Laredo. I'll be brief. I see the packets every week. I knew this issue was being discussed in ZAP. Councilor Farrell mentioned that he goes to these meetings. He's in Ward 8. He's more on top of these things than I am. I have great confidence in this committee, and it just feels awfully odd to send something back to the committee whose chair opposes that. I think we ought to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Block. Next, Councilor Baker. You've got, I think, a minute and a half or so left, Councilor Baker.
Thank you. Just on the point of clarification, because I think it's to be helpful, we do have now an ordinance that says that if you build anything within the setback that's 4 feet high, you need a special permit. There are no criteria other than the general land use criteria for that grant of a special permit. And the Land Use Committee has done it and there's an item just docketed before us tonight on that. We also passed, as part of the VCOD, a provision that said any retaining wall of over 4 feet inside a VCOD is going to need a special permit, whether it's inside the setback or not. What we've done in committee is to say, let's take what we did in the VCOD, which is to make it a general special permit requirement, and add to it some criteria, which were recommended to us by the planning department before the item was heard, not on the night it was heard. It was elaborated at that discussion. The clerk can put the language on the board, on the screen if we need to, but we had thoughtful input from the planning board, some recommendations for changes that we're modifying that language to include the neighborhood context as well as the impact on immediate abutters as well as the public. And so the point here is that what you have before us is a more nuanced version than we actually have in the VCOD and we have now for within the setback. So this is an opportunity to move forward not only to address a problem that is citywide in scope, but to do it in a way that gets us started down the road of a better criteria and a better path. We can certainly learn from the Land Use Committee, and any member of the Land Use Committee is always welcome, as far as I'm concerned, to come to our committee and be recognized and be heard anytime they want to, because I think they have valuable expertise, and it's certainly, I respect all of their work, and certainly they have extended courtesies to me in the past when I've attended Land Use Committee meetings. But I do think that we owe it to the citizens of the city to show that we can start making progress on the concerns that brought them to the ballot box this last November to say we are concerned about what happens in our city in terms of development. Here we have something that councilors have said is a problem we need to address. I don't think there's harm in getting it done moving forward on it now. We can adjust it later, but I can guarantee you, because of our docket and the matters we have before us in the budget, that we will not be able to return to this quickly, and I think that would be a mistake. So let us take this first small step. We have more nuanced work to do.
You're out of time, Councilor Baker, so.
Well, I'm out of words too, so that's fine.
Councilor Lipoff, the last word, I trust, and then we're going to vote.
Okay. So people have asked, what are we going to accomplish? I think that you've heard from everybody, the Great Wall in Ward 1 is something we need to fix. That's a 23-foot wall. To do that with anything over 4 feet as a special permit is a little much. And the talk of maybe it's 6 feet. How tall are you? He's maybe 6'4". That would work. Okay. So really, what's there to discuss? Maybe that's not the way to do it. That's a horrifying picture in Nonantum. But maybe 4 feet isn't right. It's reminiscent of this 3-foot grade change, and we're asking you to humor us. That's really it. Everybody on land use here really is worried about it and wants to weigh in. Thanks.
All right. I'm going to, unless I see anybody else, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll. Let's just be very clear. A yes or an aye sends this back to the Zoning and Planning Committee. A no or a nay keeps it here, and we consider the item on its merits. Majority vote required to send it back, 2/3 vote required to approve the proposal. You call the roll, please.
Counselor Albright.
Aye.
Counselor Baker.
No.
Counselor Bixby.
No.
Counselor Block.
No.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
No.
Counselor Farrell.
No.
Counselor Gentile.
No.
Counselor Getz.
No.
Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
No.
Counselor Kalis.
No.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman.
No.
Counselor Leary.
No.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
No.
Counselor Mickley.
No.
Counselor Oliver.
Nope.
Counselor Wright.
No.
President Laredo.
No.
Motion fails, 8 yeas, 16 nays.
So we have before us the main item. I think in the course of our discussion right now on the previous motion to recommit, we heard a fair amount about the substance. So if someone else wants to say something on the substance of the docket item, of course they're able to do so. But if it's been said already, let's not repeat it. So with that, is there anyone who wishes to be recognized on the main item? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll. Remember, an aye or a yes means you are in favor of the docket item. A no or a nay means you're against it. 2/3 vote required to pass it. Go ahead, please.
Counselor Albright.
Aye.
Counselor Baker.
Aye.
Counselor Bixby.
Aye.
Counselor Block.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
No.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Farrell.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile.
Aye.
Counselor Getz.
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
No.
Counselor Krinsman.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Mickley.
Aye.
Counselor Oliver.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Laredo.
Aye.
Motion carries 22 yeas, 2 nays.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That concludes our business this evening at 9:17. Councilor Kelly, would you give us a motion to adjourn, please?
Move to adjourn.
All right, thank you all very much. Please remember to pick up your budget books. Lots of reading ahead of us. Thank you.